Jasmine Carter had always loved her hair. It was thick, coiled, and beautifully wild, a crown passed down through generations of strong black women. But in the sterile, rule-driven halls of Ridgeway Academy, her crown had become a target. The morning she walked into school, unaware that her very existence would challenge the system, she was met with sharp whispers and cold stares. The principal's voice crackled over the intercom, calling her to the office. Her stomach tightened. She hadn't done anything wrong. Or had she? As she walked through the silent corridors, she had no idea that what would happen next would leave the entire school, and the world, speechless. Part 1. The Call to the Office. Jasmine adjusted her backpack and stepped into the principal's office, her heart pounding against her ribs. Principal Edwards, a middle-aged man with a graying mustache and a reputation for being fair but firm, sat behind his desk, fingers laced together. Mrs. Whitmore, the vice principal, stood beside him, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Jasmine, please take a seat," Principal Edwards said, his voice devoid of warmth. Confused, Jasmine lowered herself onto the chair, clutching the strap of her backpack like a lifeline. "You are in violation of the school's dress code," Mrs. Whitmore stated, her eyes scanning a printed document in her hands. Jasmine frowned. "I don't understand." Mrs. Whitmore sighed as if she were speaking to a defiant child. "Your hair, Jasmine. It is unkempt and inappropriate for the school environment. The handbook clearly states that all students must maintain a neat and professional appearance." Jasmine's fingers curled into fists. "My hair is neat. It's just natural." Principal Edwards shifted in his seat. "We're not here to debate the rules. You've been warned before and yet you continue to disregard school policy. As a result, we have no choice but to suspend you until you comply." Silence suffocated the room. Jasmine's ears buzzed. The words felt unreal, like they had been plucked from a different era. A time when black girls were told they had to conform, to straighten, to shrink themselves to fit into someone else's standards. "But that's not fair," Jasmine protested. "You're punishing me for my hair. For being myself." "This is not about identity," Mrs. Whitmore countered. "It's about following the rules." Jasmine felt the burn of injustice clawing up her throat, but she knew arguing would get her nowhere. She stood up, holding her head high despite the betrayal weighing her down. "My parents will hear about this," she said, her voice steady. Principal Edwards nodded. "That's fine. You're suspended for 3 days. Go home." With trembling hands, Jasmine picked up her backpack and walked out. But she wasn't going to let this go. Not this time. Part 2. The Backlash. As soon as Jasmine left the school building, she pulled out her phone and recorded a video. Her voice shook with rage and hurt as she explained what had happened. Within hours, the video spread like wildfire. Thousands of people commented, sharing similar stories of discrimination. Hashtags demanding justice for Jasmine began trending. News outlets reached out. Celebrities voiced their support. The school had made a grave mistake. Meanwhile, Principal Edwards sat in his office, watching the chaos unfold. His phone buzzed with messages from furious parents and school board officials. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He had enforced the rules, yet now he was the villain. The school's reputation was on the line. He needed to act fast. And so, he did something no one expected. The next morning, Jasmine woke up to her phone vibrating incessantly. She squinted at the screen. Her video had amassed millions of views overnight. Messages from classmates, teachers, and even strangers filled her notifications, all supporting her fight for justice. Then something strange happened. The school issued a statement. Principal Edwards himself had made a public declaration. Ridgeway Academy would be reviewing and revising its dress code policy immediately. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat as she read the words. Was this real? The same man who had enforced her suspension was now reversing course? Still, she wasn't convinced. Actions spoke louder than words, and she wasn't about to be pacified by empty promises. Her mother, Angela Carter, wasn't buying it either. She had been on the phone all morning, contacting legal experts and civil rights advocates. "We're going to that school board meeting tonight," she told Jasmine firmly. "If they think we're going to let this go quietly, they've got another thing coming." That evening, the Ridgeway Academy auditorium was packed with reporters, students, parents, and activists. The tension was thick as Principal Edwards took the stage, clearing his throat. "I want to start by saying we made a mistake," he admitted. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Jasmine Carter's suspension was unjust, and we take full responsibility. Effective immediately, the policy regarding hairstyles will be rewritten to ensure inclusivity for all students." A murmur spread through the rodents. A murmur spread through the room. Some nodded in agreement, others narrowed their eyes in suspicion. It was a shocking turn of events, but one question lingered in everyone's mind. Why the sudden change of heart? Jasmine stood, microphone in hand, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Principal Edwards, why now? You enforced this rule and now, under pressure, you're changing it. What made you realize it was wrong? Principal Edwards hesitated, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. Then he said something that no one saw coming. The auditorium fell into a stunned silence as Principal Edwards took a deep breath. Because, he began, voice trembling slightly, I have been guilty of the same kind of prejudice before, and I refuse to continue that cycle. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jasmine narrowed her eyes, skeptical. What do you mean? Edwards exhaled heavily. Years ago I was a teacher in a different district. A student named Ayana was in my class. She was brilliant, but she was constantly penalized for things like attitude or unprofessionalism. Which, looking back, was just code for being unapologetically herself. I didn't stand up for her. I enforced the rules just as I did with you, Jasmine. The room hung on his every word. One day she stopped coming to school. I found out later that the constant pressure to change, to be someone she wasn't, had broken her spirit. She dropped out and disappeared from the system. I never forgot her. And when I saw your face in my office, Jasmine, I saw her. And I failed you just like I failed her. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Jasmine felt her chest tighten. She hadn't expected this. Edward straightened. I can't undo the harm I've caused, but I can make sure Ridgeway Academy never makes this mistake again. That's why I'm not just changing the dress code, I'm implementing a committee of students, teachers, and parents to ensure no one is ever discriminated against in this school again. The room erupted into applause. Some people still looked wary, but for the first time, Jasmine saw something in Principal Edwards's face that hadn't been there before: sincerity. As she stepped away from the microphone, Jasmine knew one thing for sure. This fight was far from over, but for the first time real change had begun. Despite the applause that filled the auditorium, Jasmine remained on edge. Principal Edwards' confession had been unexpected, even moving, but words alone weren't enough. Change required action. After the meeting, Jasmine, her mother, and a group of supporters gathered in the school parking lot. Reporters swarmed, eager for interviews. A well-dressed woman stepped forward, introducing herself as Michelle Reynolds, a civil rights attorney. Jasmine, what you've done is incredible, she said, shaking her hand. But you need to make sure this policy change is real and lasting. If you're willing, I'd like to help. Jasmine's mother spoke up. Help how? Michelle pulled out a folder. A lawsuit. Ridgeway Academy has a history of discriminatory policies. This isn't just about Jasmine, this is about systemic change. If we take legal action, we can ensure no black student is ever targeted like this again. Jasmine's stomach twisted. The idea of a lawsuit felt huge, overwhelming. But then she thought about Ayana, the girl Principal Edwards had failed. She thought about the thousands of students commenting on her video, sharing their own stories of injustice. I want to do it, Jasmine said firmly. The next morning, the news broke. Jasmine Carter was suing Ridgeway Academy for racial discrimination. The school board was in chaos. While Principal Edwards had been open to change, others weren't so willing. At a private meeting, board member Richard Calloway slammed his fist on the table. This girl is trying to destroy us. We can't just roll over. Whitmore, who had been quiet until now, cleared her throat. Maybe we should have listened to her in the first place. Calloway scoffed. Are you serious? If we settle, we admit we were wrong. Principal Edwards crossed his arms. We were wrong. The tension in the room thickened. The battle was far from over, and Jasmine was about to find herself at the center of a legal storm she never could have imagined. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through the community. News stations covered Jasmine's story, social media exploded with support, and civil rights groups joined the fight. Ridgeway Academy found itself at the center of a nationwide debate about hair discrimination and racial bias in schools. Despite the mounting pressure, the school board remained resistant. They hired a high-profile legal team, arguing that their dress code had nothing to do with race. But Jasmine and her supporters were ready. Michelle Reynolds, her attorney, had gathered overwhelming evidence, not just about Jasmine's suspension, but about a pattern of discrimination within Ridgeway Academy. Former students came forward with similar stories, and soon the case had grown beyond just one girl's fight. It had become a movement. The courtroom was packed when the trial finally began. Jasmine sat beside her mother, her hands trembling slightly, but her resolve was strong. She listened as Michelle laid out the case, highlighting the school's unfair enforcement of policies against black students. The opposing attorney tried to downplay the issue, but then, Principal Edwards was called to testify. Under oath, he repeated what he had admitted at the school board meeting. I upheld policies that were discriminatory whether I realized it at the time or not. I failed my students and I failed Jasmine. His confession was a turning point. The school's defense crumbled. After weeks of hearings, the verdict was announced. Ridgeway Academy was found guilty of racial discrimination. The court ordered the school to pay damages to Jasmine and her family and to implement mandatory diversity training for staff. More importantly, they were required to revise their dress code to be inclusive of all cultural and natural hairstyles. The victory was historic. As Jasmine stood outside the courthouse, surrounded by cameras and supporters, she felt a sense of triumph, but also of responsibility. This wasn't just for me, she told the reporters. This was for every black girl who's been told her natural hair isn't good enough. That ends today. Months later, Jasmine returned to Ridgeway Academy, walking through the same halls where she had once been humiliated. But this time something was different. Students of all backgrounds had embraced their natural hair, wearing braids, curls, and afros with pride. The rigid rules that once tried to suppress them had been rewritten. Principal Edwards approached her, his expression unreadable. "Jasmine," he said, pausing. "Thank you for making me see what I should have seen a long time ago." Jasmine gave a small nod. It's never too late to do the right thing. As she stepped into her classroom, head held high, she knew that her fight had sparked something bigger than herself. She had changed Ridgeway Academy, and maybe, just maybe, the world beyond it.